Hello everyone, my name is Victor. I am the Occult Technician, and this is Mind War, Season 6, Episode 9. Welcome back to Mind War, folks. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. So folks, as of this recording, Mother Mind War has passed away. It's been a few weeks now since her passing. It was peaceful and proper. I think that's the most that we'll say about it right now. But I've learned a lot over these last few months. A lot of things that I think I need to share with all of you. But the Gateway Experience series that we're currently in right now is just not the time nor place to share this information. So, over the next few months, I'm going to do my very best to put that information together for all of you and present it to you. And, I'll let you know where to find it and when it's available, right? But I think there's some really important information that's worth sharing. With that being said, one thing that, again, I think we have to address with what happened here. Throughout the Gateway series, we've been working on this for 10 months now, something like that, 40-something episodes. Maybe more. I think we're going to end up with 48 or more episodes total. We have been working on this for months. And throughout this series, we read through Robert Monroe's books. We worked through the Gateway Experience tapes, waves really 1 through 6. And we saw a lot of what I call self-help. I really think that's what the tapes were originally intended for. I think they are a form of self-help, healing the mind, body, and spirit. But they went beyond that when we started learning tools, in my opinion, magical tools, where we started to learn things like, out-of-body experiences, remote viewing, astral travel. And, again, those were ways to upgrade our abilities, our magical abilities, right? Again, the Gateway Experience tapes, I believe, are a scientific way to learn magic. And we saw this move away from self-help into helping others who had recently passed away. We saw that as we moved in really into wave 7 is where it became very apparent. We saw that when we were reading through Robert Monroe's book, Ultimate Journey, where we were hearing from a desperate man who is attempting to understand what happens in life after death, right? What happens in the beyond. Because he was worried and kind of afraid, not just for himself, but for his wife, Nancy, who was dying of cancer. And he wanted to provide her with some answers. And so we saw this really dramatic shift occur in the purpose of the tapes. A shift that I was not aware of. I didn't see this coming. I've been very honest with all of you that, yes, I listened to the Gateway Experience tapes before, but I never finished waves 6 and 7. And again, until a few months ago, I didn't even know there was a wave 8. I've made a lot of mistakes throughout this journey. Things like thinking that Nancy was the one that recorded waves 5 and 6, but it was Robert's daughter, right? Just simple mistakes, calling him Dr. Robert Monroe when he wasn't actually a doctor. Learning very late in the series that there was a wave 8. And I hope that those things prove to you my authenticity, that I'm not here as some scholar who knows everything, and you know, I'm right here learning with all of you. We're learning this together. So when this dramatic shift occurred away from self-help into helping others who have recently passed away, and right as that shift was occurring, my mother got her cancer diagnosis. That cannot be a coincidence. It just cannot be. Especially with all the other things that we've seen, not only throughout this series, but over the last 3 years that I've been doing this work, this art project, this scientific magic journey, the two pillars, the black and white, right? It cannot be a coincidence that this occurred this way. And again, when I look back on some of those other things that we say, well, that can't be a coincidence either, right? My friend Deog, my friend Joe, the guy who's been a member of a Judeo-Christian cult for 25 years, I call out to him into the abyss and I say, I see you. And 3 days later, he shows up on my television screen because some YouTubers, you know, go undercover in his occult or into his cult, right? That cannot be just a coincidence. Healing my body with the energy toolbar and the living body map, and 3 days later receiving my first dose of new medication that helped heal my body. That can't just be a coincidence. And so what happens is when these things start to occur in your own life, now you start to look at all of the other conspiracies and coincidences that just happen to be occurring around the world. And it makes you really start to question what is really going on. So there has been some existential thoughts and emotions that I've had over these last few weeks, not only because of Mother's passing and everything that went on with that, but this kind of realization that something bigger is occurring here. So again, I will do my best to tell the story of what has occurred over the last 3 months. It's amazing. There's some really interesting things that have happened and a lot of practical knowledge that I want to share with all of you for when you find yourself in the same situation. Okay. With that being said, because things have been difficult here over the last few months, as I've been trying to record the podcast here at the Mind War Manor, and we haven't quite hit this report, the analysis and assessment of the gateway process, as fast as I had hoped. We're actually behind schedule a little bit. So tonight I am going to be doing my very best to record 4 full episodes. So these 4 episodes that you're going to see in a row, these are all being recorded tonight. It's already almost 9 o'clock here at the Mind War Manor, so we'll see how far I can get. But we really have to work through this report over these next 4 episodes. So we're going to cover about, I think, 7 different sections per episode. I'm going to tear through them as fast as I can. And we need to get this completed. That way we can get to the series finale, the Gateway Experience series finale, before the end of winter. So that way that when the springtime comes, we can start anew with our series on magic. Okay. So with that being said, thank you so much. I've already gotten wonderful messages from some of you, and that means so much. And thank you for being here with me through this. This speaking with all of you, sharing this information with you has been very therapeutic. It's helped me get through this process. And I cannot thank you enough for that. And again, I'm going to do my best to share everything that I've learned over these last few months with all of you when the time is right. So with that being said, let's jump back into analysis and assessment of the gateway process. Okay, section 11 of analysis and assessment of the gateway process. Section 11, consciousness and energy. Before our explanation can proceed any further, it is essential to define the mechanism by which the human mind exercises the function known as consciousness, and to describe the way in which that consciousness operates to deduce meaning from the stimuli which it receives. To do this, we will first consider the fundamental character of the material world in which we have physical existence, in order to accurately perceive the raw stuff with which our consciousness must work. Okay, so the authors here are going to do their very best to explain how our consciousness works. And when you hear folks like Lieutenant Colonel McDonald and his partner here, Bentov, I believe, right? Very intelligent scientists, when they use words like raw stuff, you know that we're moving into some eccentric territory. So let's see what they have to say. The first point which needs to be made is that the two terms, matter and energy, tend to be misleading if taken to indicate two distinctly different states of existence in the physical world that we know it. Indeed, if the term matter is taken to mean solid substance as opposed to energy, which is understood to mean a force of some sort, then the use of the former is entirely misleading. Science now knows that both the electrons which spin in the energy field located around the nucleus of the atom and the nucleus itself are made up of nothing more than oscillating energy grids. Solid matter, in the strict construction of the term, simply does not exist. Rather, atomic structure is composed of oscillating energy grids surrounded by other oscillating energy grids, which orbit at extraordinarily high speeds. In his book, Stalking the Wild Pendulum, Itzhak Bentov gives the following figures. The energy grid which composes the nucleus of the atom vibrates at approximately 10 to the 22nd hertz, which means 10 followed by 22 zeros. At 70 degrees Fahrenheit, an atom oscillates at the rate of 10 to the 15 hertz. An entire molecule composed of a number of atoms bound together in a single energy field vibrates at the range of 10 to the 9th hertz. A live human cell vibrates at approximately 10 to the 3rd hertz. The point to be made is that the entire human being, brain, consciousness, and all is, like the universe which surrounds him, nothing more or less than an extraordinarily complex system of energy fields. The so-called states of matter are actually variances in the state of energy, and human consciousness is a function of the interaction of energy in two opposite states, motion versus rest, in a manner described in the following paragraph. Okay, lots of talk there. Again, if we think about water, right? Water, when it's boiling, is the water molecules that are made up of hydrogen and oxygen, right? H2O. You have these little molecules, they're made up of atoms. Again, atoms are made up of the nucleus and the electrons, and they're little spinning balls of energy, basically. So when the molecules of water, when they're heated up with high temperature, now they're moving around a lot. The water starts to boil, and then eventually it evaporates from liquid and turns into a gas, right? So we're watching energy happen. We can see the energy occurring when the heat is applied to water, so much so that it actually will change its physical state of matter, again, from water to vapor. But when we take that same liquid water and we slow down the molecules by taking away the temperature, making it cold, freezing it, Now those molecules stop moving around and they start to get in perfect little grid patterns. That's what creates the snowflakes and the shape of ice and everything when we see it. And now there's less movement. Those atoms are still moving, the little nucleus and electrons and everything, they're still moving around in there, but the molecules themselves are not moving, okay? So now that water becomes a solid, all right? Just different states of matter based on the amount of energy that is applied to them or removed from them. So again, everything is energy, and that's cool, and that's fine. But we're not going to get so esoteric with it and so over the top with it that we start thinking that solid objects aren't real. Okay? We're not going there yet. We're not superheroes that can walk through walls and everything. Our physical body is still made up of physical things, rocks, wood, stuff like that. It's still physical. Okay? So we're not going to lose ourselves in that idea. But we do have to understand that different states of matter are basically the addition of energy or the subtraction of energy, and it changes the state of matter based on the energy that's there, okay? With that all being said, we're about to go into some, I think, very eccentric and, we'll follow along with these guys as far as we can. But again, very scientific stuff. We're going to take it all with a grain of salt if we need to, and not allow ourselves to be too emotionally attached to this information or let it sweep us away in some kind of, far out ideas, right? We're going to keep our feet planted on the ground because that's what we're doing. That's what the Mind War is. That's what the Mind War podcast is all about. Breaking down the occult, breaking down the esoteric, removing the the silliness from it, removing all of the fear from it, and breaking it down into things that we can really do and really see and really understand. Okay, so let's go into section number 12, holograms. Okay. Energy creates, stores, and retrieves meaning in the universe by projecting or expanding a certain frequency in a three-dimensional mode that creates a living pattern called a hologram. The concept of the hologram can be most easily understood by using an example cited by Bentov, in which he asks the reader to visualize a bowl full of water, into which 3 pebbles are dropped. As the ripples created by the simultaneous entry of the 3 pebbles radiate outward towards the rim of the bowl, Bentov further asks the reader to visualize that the surface of the water is suddenly flash frozen, so that the ripple pattern is preserved instantly. The ice is removed, leaving the 3 pebbles still laying at the bottom of the bowl. Then the ice is exposed to a powerful, coherent source of light such as a laser. The result will be a 3-dimensional model or representation of the position of the 3 pebbles suspended in midair. Holograms are capable of encoding so much detail that, for example, it is possible to take a holographic projection of a glass of swamp water and view it under magnification to see small organisms not visible to the naked eye when the glass of water itself is examined. The whole concept of holography, despite its scientific implications, has only been known to the physicists since the underlying mathematical principles were worked out by Dennis Gabor in 1947. He later won a Nobel Prize for his work. Laboratory demonstration of Gabor's work only occurred years later following the invention of the laser. A biologist, Lyle Watson, explains, "The purest kind of light available to us is that produced by a laser, which sends out a beam in which all the waves are of one frequency, like those made by an ideal pebble in a perfect pond. When 2 laser beams touch, they produce an interference pattern of light and dark ripples that can be recorded on a photographic plate. And if one of the beams, instead of coming directly from the laser, is reflected first off an object, such as a human face, the resulting pattern will be very complex indeed, but it will still be recorded. The record will be a hologram of the face. Okay. Why are we talking about this? Why are we talking about holograms all of a sudden? So again, think of taking an object like this mouse here. You take a laser measuring device. You do a 360 scan of this mouse. You take all the measurements from it, and now you can replicate it in your computer and make a digital copy of this, almost like a video game, where you could now move it all around and look at it, right? Like AutoCAD. I started doing AutoCAD when I was a young teenager. It's kind of stuff we did, right? And basically, you're taking that measurement, right? The measurement, the mathematical formula that makes up the shape here. It's not the shape itself, it's not the object itself, but it still contains the information to create the object, okay? And again, why are we talking about holograms? I think where the authors are going to lead us here, and we'll find out, is that basically we've talked so much about imagination. Without imagination, there is no manifestation. So we have to understand not only how we see and interact with the real world, the real physical world, but then we take that and we place it now into our imagination, and it allows us to create the scenes and scenarios, right, that we talk about. We talk so much about creating these worlds, these places, these locales, the different focus levels in our imagination. It's all happening in our imagination, right? So I think what they're trying to do here is explain how through our experience and interaction with the real world, we take that and we learn it and we apply that to our imagination, right? Section number 13, the part encodes the whole. Of further importance is the fact that even if we dropped our frozen hologram of the ripple pattern on the floor and broke it into a number of pieces, each individual piece would recreate the entire holographic image all by itself. The smaller the piece, the fuzzier and more distorted would be the resulting holographic projection, but the fact remains that a whole projection would nonetheless be made. The key to creating any hologram is that energy in motion must interact with energy in the state of rest or non-motion. In the foregoing example, the pebbles represent energy in motion, while the water, before its agitation by the pebbles, represents energy at a state of rest. To activate, or in effect to perceive the meaning of the holograph, energy, in this case a coherent light source such as a laser beam, must be passed through the interference pattern generated by interaction between the moving energy and the energy at rest. In the simple example given by Bentov, this requirement was fulfilled by holding the frozen interference pattern in front of the coherent light to project the three-dimensional holographic image, its meaning, into space. As Marilyn Ferguson, editor of the Brain Mind Bulletin, tells us, another feature of a hologram is its efficiency. Billions of bits of information can be stored in a tiny space. The pattern of the holographic photograph is stored everywhere on the plate. So again, in our imagination, we create these things in our mind. We render them the same way that video games render the world that we play in. And we get to create those things. And in our mind, we hold all of that information, all of those calculations. Of course, we don't know the math that puts it all together, but that's the beauty of the human mind. We don't need to know every single detail of math in order to think of, the garden and be able to visualize it in your mind, right? You can see it being created before you, but you don't have to know the measurements of the walkway and how tall the trees are and how far away the gazebo is from where you're standing, right? You don't need to know those measurements, but you can create it in your mind anyways, right? So number 14, section 14 of our report here, the conscious matrix. The universe is composed of interacting energy fields, some at rest and some in motion. In it, it is in and of itself one gigantic hologram of unbelievable complexity. Okay, we've heard this before. The whole universe is a hologram. Again, be careful with that, right? We still live in a physical world. Okay. Again, all of these things that our bodies are made out of, our furniture, our homes, rocks, all that stuff, it is physical. It's made out of energy, but don't let that trip your mind up to be like, oh, nothing's real. It's all just energy. All right. Let's not go too far with the whole universe being a hologram. Okay. But we'll see where these guys take us. According to the theories of Carl Pribram, a neuroscientist at Stanford University, and David Bohm, a physicist at the University of London, the human mind is also a hologram which attunes itself to the universal hologram by the medium of energy exchange, thereby deducing meaning and achieving the state which we call consciousness. With respect to states of expanded or altered consciousness, such as gateway uses, the process operates in the following way. As energy passes through various aspects of the universal hologram and is perceived by the electrostatic fields which compose the human mind, the holographic images being conveyed are projected upon those electrostatic fields of the mind and are perceived or understood to the extent that the electrostatic field is operating at a frequency and amplitude that can harmonize with and therefore read the energy carrier wave pattern passing through it. Wow. Okay. When we look at something with our physical eyes, what we are seeing is the light that is coming from the light source, right? The light source here is reflecting off of things, my bald head here, the art behind me, whatever it's reflecting off of, right? It reflects off of that physical object. It hits our eyeball. I believe it flips over somehow. And basically, that image, again, that hologram is created in our mind, right? Again, because it's light wave energy reflecting off of a solid object, bouncing back to our eyes, and then our mind is able to, again, render these things in front of us, right? That's how we're able to see them. That creates the hologram in our mind that allows us to see and interact with the real world. Yes, it is energy and vibration and frequency and all those things that we talked about that make it possible. But again, that doesn't mean that the table I'm sitting at isn't real and isn't physical and isn't here in front of me. Okay. Let's see. Changes in the frequency and amplitude of the electrostatic field, which compromises the human mind, determines the configuration and hence the character of the holographic energy matrix which the mind projects to intercept meaning directly from the holographic transmissions of the universe. Then, to make sense of what the holographic image is saying to it, the mind proceeds to compare the image just received with itself. Specifically, it does this by comparing the image received with that part of its own hologram which constitutes memory. By registering differences in geometric form and in energy frequency, the consciousness perceives. Okay? So again, when we look at an object, we're receiving the light that is bouncing off of it. It's going into our eyeballs. It's being processed by the brain. We are turning to our memory, so we know what color is what. When I look at the walls, we see red, we see white, we got the brown table here, right? The memory has to recall all of those things when these light patterns come into our mind. And it says here, by registering differences in geometric form. Okay. One side note real quick, the tarot card that I pulled last night, the spirit that I'm working with this month, teaches man about geometry. And I think that was very interesting that I just pulled that card last night, and we are getting so deep into this topic here. This is kind of an example of how the tarot cards are going to work. And again, we're going to talk more about that on the spiritual series when we get into the series on magic. But I just thought that was very interesting that the spirit that I'm working with this month, one of the things that they do is teach man about geometry. So we have a picture here of a conscious energy grid. The left hemisphere consciousness grid acts like the mind's computer software to reduce input from right hemisphere to verbal symbols and concepts. And the right hemisphere consciousness grid reduces three-dimensional holographic images to two-dimensional go, no-go. That's just what it says. Go, no, go, fo. Forward, maybe. I think it was cut off there. So again, the right hemisphere, our animal instincts, that side of our mind that is really, does things like controls our heartbeat and all that stuff. And again, where those animal instincts lie, that's where we get our spirit passed on through the physical reincarnation in life. That's where the mentor lives, right? The right side of our mind, that's that darkness that we don't necessarily have complete control of, but what we're exploring and trying to figure out more. And the left side of the brain is, like the author says here, is like that computer software, right? So the right side is receiving all the stimuli through our five senses, and the left hemisphere is gathering all the information, computing it, organizing it, and again, recalling through memory, putting things in a category, and allowing us to move forward and function in our physical world. Okay. Contrary to what everyone knows is so, it may not be the brain that produces consciousness, but rather consciousness that creates the appearance of the brain. All right, man. Again, that's where we get a little too hippy-dippy for me, okay? The brain is here. It's real. It's physical. I believe it's made out of 70% cholesterol. Cholesterol is not bad for you if it's the good kind, the kind you get from egg yolks and good butter and all that kind of stuff. It's also made out of water, right? The brain is real, okay? It's a real physical object. It's not just here because we are imagining our brain being real. We have to get away from that. We have to be very careful with that. Again, it's like reincarnation. If you believe that you have unlimited chances at physical life here on Earth, you're not going to appreciate the life that you have right now as much as you should. You get one chance. That's it. We've already talked about one chance. Don't fuck it up. Okay? Do the work. Put in the work now. You will not get another chance to reincarnate into another physical body with the conscious soul that we are right now, that I'm talking to you with, that you're hearing this with, right? Again, reincarnation is through the physical. When you have offspring, that fulfills your need for reincarnation. Section 15, brain in phase. The consciousness process is most easily envisaged if we picture the holographic input with a three-dimensional grid system superimposed over it, such that all the energy patterns contained within can be described in terms of three-dimensional geometry using mathematics to reduce the data to two-dimensional form. Bentov states that scientists suspect that the human mind operates on a simple binary, go/no or go system, as do all digital computers. So ones and zeros, on and off, go, don't go, right? It's pretty simple, yet very complex, right? Trying to learn binary as an information technology specialist was very confusing for me. But through computer networking, I really started to understand what it meant, right? So when one server, or say your Wi-Fi router, is communicating with your phone, right? Sending information for you to watch this video right now, it is doing it with ones and zeros, ons and offs, right? And basically, when you send a packet of information, because it's not a continuous flow, it's a constant it's a constant flow of packets, right? So your phone is basically receiving through the Wi-Fi, billions of envelopes full of information, and it has to receive the envelope, open it, read the information, process it, and show it to you, and then the next envelope, over and over and over again. Those are called packets, and those packets are made up of ones and zeros. Ones and zeros describe colors and sounds and all the visuals and everything that we see, right? On and off, 1 and 0. Therefore, once it superimposes a three-dimensional matrix over holographic information it wishes to interpret and reduces that information mathematically to two-dimensional form, it can completely process it using its fundamental binary system, just as any computer made by the hand of man can process volumes of data and make various comparisons between the data and information stored in its digital memory. Our minds operate in the same way. Let me clarify that. Computers operate in the way that our mind does. We built computers to mimic human minds. It's that simple. That's what I learned in my 20 years of being an IT specialist, is that computers are simply mimicking the human mind. Okay, it's not the other way around. And I think they know that here. Bentov states that proposition this way: our whole reality is constructed by constantly making such comparisons. Whenever we perceive something, we always perceive differences only. Interesting. In states of expanded consciousness, the right hemisphere of the human brain, in its holistic, nonlinear, and nonverbal mode of functioning, acts as the primary matrix or receptor for this holographic input, while, by operating in phase or coherence with the right brain, the left hemisphere provides the secondary matrix through its binary, computer-like method of functioning to screen further the data by comparison and reduce it to a discrete two-dimensional form. The right side of the brain allows you to feel love. The left side of the brain allows you to describe that feeling. Section 16, Evaluation. To the extent that Gateway succeeds in bringing about a refinement in energy matrix of the mind, it succeeds in expanding or altering human consciousness so that it can perceive without recourse to the intercession of the physical senses, such that ever more of the universal hologram, not of course accessible by sense perception, can ultimately be perceived and understood. Marilyn Ferguson has written that the theories of Pribram and Bohm appear to account for all transcendental experience, paranormal events, and even normal perceptual oddities. She goes on to say of Pribram, currently he is proposing a startling, all-encompassing model that is generating considerable excitement among those intrigued by the mysteries of human consciousness. His holographic model marries brain research to theoretical physics. It accounts for normal perception and simultaneously takes the paranormal and transcendental experiences out of the supernatural by explaining them as a part of nature. Like certain strange discoveries of quantum physics, the radical reorientation of this theory suddenly makes sense of paradoxical sayings of mystics throughout the ages. That's what we're doing here, folks. We've talked about this before. Through our journey and search through the scientific method, that's why we started with this, the scientific side of what we're doing, scientific side of occultism. We are understanding and being able to control and maybe even calculate one day the sayings of mystics throughout the ages, right? And it's amazing that they've been able to, these scientists have been brave enough to say, listen, through some of our scientific research, we're starting to cross the bridge into some of these other occult and esoteric teachings that we've heard about through thousands of years, right? Most scientists, especially today, if they get anywhere near that, they shut it down. They don't want to get anywhere near this side of our reality. But we're also here, what I think was very interesting, and we learn about this more, is that all of these things that we call occultism, right? All of these powers and tools that we're learning, there's a connection to all of it. It's all connected together. This isn't a separate thing, science and magic. They are together as one, right? And that's what we're trying to do here in the Mind War is break down that barrier between them. Our final section for today, section 17, self-cognition. To complete our outline of the process by which the mind achieves and exercises consciousness, we must also describe the mechanisms which accounts for the aspect of human thought that differentiates it from the consciousness of plants or animals, i.e. self-cognition. I'm pretty sure animals have self-cognition. They just can't verbally explain it the same way we do. So let's be careful here. Plants probably do as well. Humans not only know, but they know that they know. They are able to monitor the process of their own thinking and maintain an awareness of it. Moreover, they can conduct various objective standards. They can conduct a comparative assessment, evaluating the functioning of their thought processes against various objective standards they have adopted. Human consciousness can do this because it has the capacity to duplicate aspects of its own hologram and project them. Again, imagination. And perceive that projection. Put it through comparison with the memory aspect, where it's the differences using three-dimensional geometry and then binary, go, no, or go, pulse, to yield verbal cognition about the self. Again, I didn't read this prior to us recording, but it's the verbal ability to describe this consciousness that makes humans different than animals. I 100% believe that my best buddy Leo, my Boston Terrier, little pup, he knows that he's conscious. He knows all about himself. He is extremely smart. When I tell him to do things, he knows exactly what to do and when to do them. And he's very self-aware, right? He knows when he goes too far, and he knows when it's time to act silly and have fun and be loving. And, so again, I think it's just the fact that they can't verbally describe it. But I think all living things are pretty conscious of themselves. Maybe those blobs that float around the ocean, maybe they don't quite understand themselves the way we do. But man, if you're a mammal, let's start there. I think mammals, insects, that kind of stuff. And I think we're all pretty conscious. So that was section 17, self-cognition. We just did sections 11 through 17 of analysis and assessment of the gateway process. And when we return, we are going to be doing a deep dive into Wave 8 Union Tape 3 educational opportunities in just a moment. Okay, let's start our deep dive into Wave 8 Union Tape 3 educational opportunities. Again, I apologize for not having the transcripts for these tapes in Wave 8. I'm sure you all can understand why maybe we didn't, prepare all that. Again, it's been very, very busy here the last few months here at the Mind War Manor. So the best I was able to do is when I get done listening to the tapes, I do a recording directly after to kind of talk about the experience, and we're going to review that right now. Again, these tapes that we do tonight or today and in the next episode, I did those tapes about 2 weeks ago. So we're going to kind of learn together what those tapes really felt like, and let's see what we got here.
This is being recorded February 12th, 2025, just days after my mother's passing. I just paused tape 8-3 because I began to hyperventilate and my hands are shaking and vibrating. I was told to visit the education center. And learn a lesson. And I reviewed the duality that I have faced over these few days since my mother's passing. I must care for my father with gentle hands and protect him from the world with brutal fists.
Wow, okay. Listening to that brings back a lot of memories. Again, this was just 2 weeks ago, but a flood of memories is coming back from what that tape was all about. At the end there was Leo. He was lapping up some water out of the water bowl we have here. But here's what happened with Wave 8 Union Tape 3 educational opportunities. We were told to go to the education center. I don't really remember much of the process of getting there. I want to be very clear. Again, this, just like I said in the recording, I did those tapes just a few days after Mother passed. I definitely took a higher dosage of Malabar psilocybin than I normally do. High levels of THC, and by the time I listened to this tape, I was, I don't want to just use the word high, right? I was definitely immersed in the effects and experience of the magic mushrooms. Okay, they're very powerful. And so listening to that tape was extremely overwhelming. And like I talked about at the beginning of this episode, a lot has occurred over the last few months that I haven't spoken of and that I will. I'm going to share it all with you, just not right here and right now. But some of those things are very upsetting. And that's what I was grappling with while listening to the tape. Okay. So, like I said there at the end, I'm here now caring for my father, Father Mindwar. He has some memory issues. And it's a big responsibility. Okay. And shortly after Mom's passing, I saw people coming at us, right? And again, I'll explain all of this more in another video, and I'll let you all know. But I realized the duality that I was facing. That to care for him, I have to do that very gently. He's such a nice guy, folks. Fuck, man. My dad is such a nice guy. Just sweet and kind and loving and funny. And I'm going to do everything I can to care for him gently and make sure that we don't break that part of him, right? But in order to do that, in order to be gentle, I also have to be brutal in my handling of those who come against us. And I promise you folks, stick around, and I'm going to tell you a story of brutality. I'm going to tell you a story of brutality. One that I think you're going to enjoy and be very proud of. I think you're going to be proud of your friend Victor here for what we did. So that was a very difficult tape. Like I said in the tape, I was hyperventilating. I had to throw the headphones off. I couldn't breathe. My hands were tingling. My feet were tingling. I was so fucking angry. So angry, man. I talked about because I'm here at the Mind War Manor, I don't get to yell and scream like I normally do, rant and rave. So a lot of that has been building up inside of me, and I can't wait to be able to get back to the Mind War Studios where I can express myself more freely. But I think a lot of that was built up during that tape, and it came out in this physical feeling of hyperventilating, shaking, being angry. And again, I didn't make it to the end of the tape. I stopped it. I had to get up. Yeah. Will that tape have the same, would I have the same experience if I listened to it today? Probably not. Probably not. There's been several weeks that have passed since all of these events have occurred. I've been able to process them more, handle my emotions more, get a more clear picture, harness all that anger. Boy, did I harness it like a fucking laser beam we were talking about before, man. And that was good. Nothing that happened with this tape was wrong. And sometimes tapes like this are going to occur. My guess is many of you are going to stop tapes in the middle because you're going to find yourself crying. You're going to be body fully asleep, mind wide awake, thinking about the things in your life that are emotionally difficult. And there are going to be tears running down your eyes, right? And you're going to have trouble breathing and stuff. And you might have to stop the tapes from that. I've had tapes where I've laughed and thought it was fun, But it's okay when that happens. If you have to stop a tape for some reason, it's okay. If you can't get back into it, that's okay too. Maybe review it at another time, make sure there's nothing that you missed. But revel in that energy. Revel in the emotional energy that these tapes pull out of you. That's what we're doing, man. We're taking off all the shackles and allowing ourselves to fully experience our emotions. And when we do it in the tapes, we don't overdo it in our lives, right? So instead of lashing out at the people that we love and care for because we're upset about something else or whatever, right? And taking it out on the people who don't deserve it, we experience that emotion during our state of somnambulance. While we're in a state of deep relaxation, a state of hypnosis, if you will, while we're under the guidance of the psilocybin, we allow those emotions to be processed. We learn from the experience, and then we put it into action. We take the feelings and emotions and everything that we just harnessed, and we turn it into action, and that's how manifestation works. It's part of it. It's a huge part of it. It's not just imagination. You can emotionally manifest as well, right? Because you're not allowing those emotions to control you in your physical daily normal life. You process them while you're under that state of somnambulance, and it's beautiful. So folks, another great episode. We knocked out 7 sections from analysis and assessment of the gateway process. We worked our deep dive through Wave 8 Union Tape 3 educational opportunities. And I shared with all of you that Mother Mind War has passed. Again, just amazing. I still can't believe that it happened the way that it has. This really, it goes beyond coincidence. And I hope over the next year as we go through that we're going to find more meaning and purpose for all of this. I think it's kind of very clear that all of this is happening for a reason. I appreciate you being here. And as always, remember, folks, harden your hearts and open your minds, because this is Mind War.